All right, Alec, welcome back to our swan song for The Godfather. We're going to talk about the death of Michael Corleone
Or
himself,
the Godfather Coda.
which, I mean, noticeably, you don't see the death of Michael Corleone in the death
Mm,
of Michael Corleone. That's the difference. Here he is.
here it is. Here it is. So it's the
I
new. It
really
just
love
came
this,
out.
actually. I
Yeah,
love the cover of this.
the art's actually like I like it a lot too. Honestly,
You got
it's
all
really
your
good.
favorites. All your favorites are there.
All your favorites. We got all your favorites. We have Michael Corleone,
Michael, Vincenzo,
Vincenzo. We've got
Connie Boboni, and
yeah.
Mary quite contrary. Um, okay, so the
So
big thing going into this is that it's a re-edit of Godfather Part 3,
yes,
done all these years later in 2020,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we were wondering, even going into it, if there's going to be any noticeable differences. Like, we'll give it another score, see if anything changes.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know what to expect here, but they made a
Yes.
whole Blu-ray. There's a whole Blu-ray for it.
Yeah.
So
With a special introduction by Francis Ford Coppola himself.
I did watch that.
I did too. I think it is good. It's good context for the film, I think.
Hmm.
Um,
Especially if you didn't, I probably wouldn't have known unless you told me. If you didn't tell me that it was supposed to be an epilogue originally.
which is good because
So
that's kind of how we interpreted the third film.
yeah, that's how it should have been, and this is
Yeah.
his way of doing that now, as the
Yeah.
Godfather coda. All right.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Is there noticeable difference to you?
Definitely. The movie feels so much more punchy to the fact that I was no longer bored.
Hmm.
And I kind of knew what was going on at all periods of time, which I didn't feel like I did in the old version. I mean, there are some things that like I was expecting. I think on our previous review we sort of talked about how maybe the opera scene could be punched up a little bit better. They didn't really do he didn't really do much with that, and yet it still worked better somehow.
I was
It
thinking the
was
same thing.
it's it's kind of wild at like how just changing around the beginning of the movie
Yeah,
really
I
just
guess,
like
yeah. They
it,
changed some things around. There's not huge changes, except
no.
for like the beginning where we start the conversation between Archbishop and Michael, which is like originally 40 minutes into the movie. In
Yeah,
the
it's
first time.
so far into the movie. Yeah.
So, but like, other than that, there's minor tweaks, but they trim a lot of the fat,
Yeah.
and so I think that does help to where like the whole stretched out opera part isn't as painful because it's not stretched out along with this other like bloated parts of the movie.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think it lends itself so it could breathe a little bit more and
definitely.
not drag
Definitely. I
on.
think I think it works a lot better. I to me it seemed like they were using some different like takes of some of the lines that were delivered too.
I don't know.
Like it seemed to me that like there was at least one line I remember hearing that I thought, wow, that was delivered a lot better. That Mary said, and I was like, wow, that was actually pretty good.
I don't know. I think you're seeing things. I think you're.
I think I might have been seeing things because the rest, I mean, it was just that one time, and then the rest of it was like, yeah, that's her, that's Mary. This
But
is-
noticeably, there are parts like the scenes will cut into like further into a conversation than they were before.
mm,
Like I particularly remember the whole conversation with Mary that Michael was having. It was like already part way through the conversation when it like
yeah,
transitioned into the scene.
yeah, they didn't spend, yeah, because that originally that conversation was like a good like 2 to 3 minute scene where it was only like 45 seconds in.
Hmm.
But you still got all the same information and it still worked really well.
Hmm.
So
But
yeah,
on paper, a lot of the stuff is the same.
it's still basically the same.
There were a couple of things that I forgot to even mention the first time around. I was like, oh yeah, we didn't even mention the whole fact that like the marionette like puppet play thing was literally about a cousin, someone falling in love with their cousin, and then the
Mm,
mother or the father getting mad about it. And it was
yeah.
coincidentally right after the Michael and Kay were talking about how
Mm,
their daughter was in love with their cousin, with her cousin.
Yeah, and then that's why she kind of like
weird.
pointedly looks at him, and he was like,
I really don't know what to make of that still. And the fact that they interjected that, like, oh, coincidentally, there's a play about the same thing going on.
Yeah.
Another cousinly love story.
Yeah, it's still kind of like weirdly unclear as to like, am I supposed to be siding with Michael on this,
No,
or
you're not. You're supposed to be siding with Mary because we love her.
But we already know that we know that it's doomed from the start because of the person that she's interested. I mean, cousin thing aside, which is weird. It's like the person who she's interested in is like a violent person, and that's not going to end well because we already saw what happened. I mean, we saw what happened with Michael in his life. You know.
Look, I mean, they did make Vincenzo. They introduced him earlier on, like you got right in there. You see him earlier, and then. He becomes more important, and I feel like on a second watch, I appreciated the scene even more where he was in the apartment and the Zaza guys.
Yeah, I thought that I really liked that scene the first time, but I totally agree with you. I such a good, well shot, well executed, tense scene. I really like that a lot. Yeah,
it's definitely the best scene that he's a part of.
Yeah,
aside for the cooking scene.
Aside from the cooking scene, I mean,
which is still here in all.
I just think he's great in general. Like I don't know if we really talked him up enough. I think he's such an interesting character, and I definitely appreciated sort of what he brought, what he kind of brings to the film, because it's almost like, because the thing that Michael sees is like, oh, he's loyal to the family. Maybe he's someone who can. Basically, because he's wanting to get out of it, it's like they bring me back in, I think I'm out, and then they
bring me back in. That's such a great scene.
And it is a great scene. But he, the whole thing of him basically looking at him and being like, he's somebody who could take over, and I can get out of this. He's somebody who can be respectful and take over. But the double-edged sword to that is that he's as violent as they come. And he's as unpredictable as they come, because he lets his emotions dictate what he does, and so that's kind of he's sort of the double-edged sword of the film in a way. I think altering the beginning of the film definitely, like I said, it punches up the movie. It makes it flows better just in general. I felt. You get right from the get-go, Michael's approached by the church or Michael is approaching the church to sort of help out with their little financial situation. And then from that, it makes sense to me that then from that, it's like, oh, now that he's being sort of celebrated and canonized, rather than just doing this awkward flashback footage, just because the Godfather Part 3 starts with just the whole ending of the first film, and then it fades into him being blessed in Canada. That all that's done. That's gone. That's not even in this movie. They just show the bits of the after party. It wasn't even all that they showed of the the party that they had for him.
But yeah, I really appreciate it. Really helped the pacing. Cutting all that out, and because the film kind of starts at a drag,
Yeah.
In the original, in this one, you're able to I was never a huge fan of that storyline to begin with, so they were able to condense it better and make it more palatable, I think.
But that whole storyline is about how Michael's trying to basically buy his redemption. More, he spent the last 20 years attempting to. This is a detail that I missed actually the first time. The hospital that he's in. Did you notice that there's a Corleone family wing?
No, I didn't actually.
I noticed that this time around, and I was like, huh. So it's so his charitable contributions have been vast, but still at the end of the day, repentance is hard to come by.
Also, I should have mentioned this line the first time, but I love when Michael says he's your first cousin. And she's like, then I'll love him first.
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah.
I like how her brother's even like, no. He's like, nah, you can't. What's going on? Come on, Mary. What are you doing?
It's just kind of it's like shades of the Padme Anakin situation. It's like weird awkwardness there almost,
Yeah.
but there's something there.
Yeah, there is something there. It's super awkward still. So
Also, that the scene at the end where he stabs the guy with his glasses, I feel like that was bloodier than I remembered. Is
it
that
definitely
just
was.
me?
Definitely was. There was a lot more of a spray.
Yeah.
Because like when it cuts back to him, it like in the original film, it did show it like kind of like gushing out. There was definitely more of an initial like whoosh, like spray
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
that came out there. I was like, whoa, that was a bit more than I remember.
I'd have to see a side by side of the whole movie, but
Yeah.
I do feel like it looks better. I mean,
Definitely, I agree. I think that this I watched it on the same TV. I think that the restoration on this was as good as the previous two ones. I think the film just looks nicer, just in general. I would agree with you.
it fits
Yeah,
because like before, it kind of felt like it could have been filmed the same time. Like it almost had the same '70s look
Yeah.
to it. This one it feels noticeably more modern. So there's that. All
you
right,
can
so
still see that delicious film grain is still present.
Yeah.
and I love that.
So let's get to the biggest change, right? Is the ending, which you don't see him slump over in his chair and fall over.
Yeah,
You instead see him just sit there, put his glasses on, and then you get a quote. All right, the quote is, "When the Sicilians wish you cent'anni, it means for long life, and a Sicilian never forgets."
yeah.
So I guess they're really driving home the fact that he like his punishment, I guess, is that his long life. You know,
Is that
That's
he has a
like-
long life. He has to live with that. Like his death doesn't mean it doesn't mean actual death. He has more or less died. His soul has died, but he has to continue living, which is like that to me is like the most chilling punishment of all. You know, he doesn't even have the satisfaction of an on-screen comeuppance. He has to live. He has to live with the fact that his sweet daughter died horribly.
And I do think that's a much better ending. I didn't
agree.
like that he just died, kind of like slumped over. It was all right.
Yeah,
And that was literally like a 10-second interjection the first time.
yeah.
This one was a little bit longer, not too much, but it felt more natural. It just kind of ended there.
It felt more natural. Another thing that I actually really liked about it too is that first of all, I think we talked about in our other review, one of my favorite edits I think I've ever seen, one of my favorite editing decisions I've seen in a film is the silent scream.
Mm-hmm.
So good. It's so powerful.
It's like 80% of the stream is silent, and then you get the very
Yeah.
tail end of it.
The very tail end of it. Yeah, it's whoever made that decision was a really good idea. But one thing that I really liked about when it cut, it sort of fades in after that to him and Mary dancing.
Yeah.
They did not cut back to him and his first wife dancing and him and
Yes, it's no
We
longer the compilation of Michael dancing with women.
it's weird. Yeah, in retrospect, that's real. I mean, it was kind of weird when we saw it before, but like seeing how Coda does it is so much better. It's so much more because the whole point of the ending is her. It is so much more poignant. Her death means so much more.
I mean, I guess
To
the
the ending of the
idea.
film.
I don't know. I guess it was. Yeah, I still don't understand why they did all the women there. Like
It was
him
kind of
dancing
like,
with-
yeah,
Because like you could be like, since he died in that one, it's like leading up to that and him going through time with the women he loved. But
mm,
I mean, why not have moments with the guys in there too? Then at that point,
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I think the focus on Mary makes more sense.
yeah. Especially with the final quote and everything, because that's what he never forget. He can never forget. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, ending was so much better.
So it's
much
nice
better.
because it's like they call it the death of Michael Corleone, but it's really like it's more metaphorical than like
Yeah.
literally the death.
Yeah,
So
which is great. I think that's more powerful and makes so much more sense with being an epilogue, which is what Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo say they always wanted, they always intended it to be the sort of finale, the coda of of the piece. So
Mhm.
yeah,
So that being said, I mean, how
Yeah.
much of an impact did it make? Because
to me,
how much will your score change really? What,
it's not drastically, but it is going to change. I
okay,
will say it
what
does
do you
go.
think?
Honestly, this is a pointed improvement. I
A
think I
one
gave the
pointed
no,
improvement.
not quite
Mhm.
that high. I give it an 8. I give this film an 8.
Mhm.
I think it still has a lot of my same sort of like problems and issues kind of with some of the acting and some of the story beats, I'm not the biggest fan of. It's
Ye-
definitely, again, still doesn't have that level of mastery that the other two films do, but I think that the re-edit greatly improves the film. This is going to be the version that I rewatch, like easily. I don't know if I ever really want to see the other version ever again. I would much prefer to just watch this. Despite the fact that I will probably buy the trilogy, this is probably going to be the version that I watch on rewatches. So,
Hmm. Yeah, see, it's tough for me because I was thinking
mm,
the same thing. 7.5 would be a step up for me. I'm borderline going to an 8 as well because I was kind of like on the cusp of being at 7.5 already.
mm.
I do feel like it ironed out a lot of stuff here, but you do ultimately you have to be on board for the cousin love, right? Still, at the end of the
You
day,
have to be on board. Do you have to? Have to is very
to really
strong.
get the payoff that you deserve, you have to be on board for it.
Love somebody else.
Love somebody else, yeah.
Yeah.
Mary was great in this movie. She really upped her acting in this one. Um,
If only Winona Ryder had been the final casting choice.
I'm gonna do an 8. All right.
Okay, all
Let's
right.
just step it up to an
That's
8.
that's fair. Yeah.
8 out
No,
of 10.
honestly, I had read a review, some sort of just general, because I didn't know we were going to be doing this originally, like, and I actually didn't know this existed until after we started doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So after we started watching these movies, so I had seen some reactions online to Coda, and some people were like, "Doesn't really change anything. They beginning, ending." I think I disagree. I think it again, it's not a drastic change, but I think it's just enough to really make the film a lot more understandable and less of a slog and punchier. It's like 15 or 20 minutes shorter too. Like they really do
Yeah, that's
cut
great.
out the fat. They trim the fat. So
Trimming the fat is the ultimate thing, and like that by itself
yeah.
doesn't seem like it would be a lot. And on paper, it's not a lot of. There's not a lot of changes there, but I don't know. It's
Hmm.
I mean, it's also the fact like we could have reviewed Godfather Part 3 again
Mm-hmm.
1 week later, and like my score could have changed to a 7.5 just from watching it again. I feel like with any movie, if you watch it a bunch of times, your opinion will change over
I suppose
time.
that's true. I suppose that's
So this
true.
is almost like a Godfather Part 3 rewatch with some minor, improvements.
Yeah.
So I'm up to an 8. So Tarkron score 8 out of 10. All
Yep.
right,
Okay.
and that's it. Godfather.
Yeah.
That's all we
That
got.
is it.
So what were our scores? We had 10 out of 10. The original
Yeah.
Godfather. Um,
I gave part 2 a
9. It
9.5
was a 9 out of 10 for
Yeah.
that, and then
and 8. Wow.
well a
This one-
7.25 for part 3.
Yeah, 7.25 and then an
And an
8 to
8.
this. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Wow.
good. I mean,
Wow.
that's a
All
good
right. Yeah.
average at the very least.
Yeah, for sure.
Ultimately, Godfather stands above them all for me. The original, that's just really something else. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed going through all these.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we finally watched these films. They're great. They're honestly, it was a treat, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
A true treat to get to finally experience cinematic, royalty, basically. So,
And just like with Star Wars, it's interesting to go through a series like this week after week.
mm,
Because, you get into the zone where you're familiar with the characters. It's not like you watch Godfather and then a few months later we come to part 2, and then a few months later part 3.
Yeah.
It's like you get to really be in that world for a while.
Yeah.
And appreciate it to the fullest. So we'll definitely be doing more movie series in the future. Probably take a break between each one, but yeah. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
If you were to recommend a video to our viewers after watching this one, what would you recommend?
Oh, go check out our review of Thor.
Of course.
Yeah, why would you not, after all? That's in our, not a series, but our Marvel film anthology, I guess you could say. We're planning, hopefully someday we'll get back to more of those.
I mean, that was through Chance Time, so
that was through Chance. No, it was through Chance Time, but it still kind of works in our Marvel film kind of thing.
Marvel, yeah. Next time we're gonna go through every Marvel movie.
Yeah, every single one. Yep.
Okay.
25 weeks. Here we go. Here it goes.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our podcast feed, like the video, leave a comment, hit the notification bell.
Bong.
Follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook, Tarkaron TWO. Okay.
All right.
All right.